Hey folks, my name is Girish Bally, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics for another week. We are going to be talking about mindfulness, and we're talking about Reiki-ness. Well, is that a word? Well, that's a word now that we're going to be using on this show. So this person I just spoke with right before the call, right before this recording, amazing person, by the way. Her name is Michelle Rose Kennedy. And no, there's not three people, it's one person. So let's get her on the call and we'll talk about the details of mindfulness and her book and everything else, whatever she does, and why is Back to Basic calling her into this call. So how are you, Michelle? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for that beautiful intro.
Thank you so much. So before we get into the details of what you do and what the book is all about, what is Reiki-ness? That is a word that I'm going to be using in the show. So what does Back to Basic mean to you?
Oh boy, it's actually to me, my concept of it is getting back to the true self, the
Mm,
true nature of ourselves, the purest form, the unconditional aspects instead of the world telling us limiting beliefs and limiting and conditioning us. Back to basics is like that unconditional true self.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you again for explaining that in your own way, what Back to Basics means. So thank you again for coming on the show. So what is Reiki-ness? What is hold space? What is that whole thing? Can you explain where this book came from? That's the first thing. I really want to understand how the title happened, or did the book happen first? So explain that process first.
Absolutely. So the book definitely happened first, but we'll go back to how that even became a thing. Um, so Reiki is, um, for those who don't know, Reiki is a form of energy healing. It's considered universal life force energy that is channeled through a practitioner, and then that practitioner sends it into the person wherever they need healing, wherever they need balancing, wherever they need a boost or clearing, the energy goes. So many of my clients, particularly those who were really struggling, whether it's anxiety, depression, or trauma, they needed something to do to work on themselves in between sessions. And during the session, occasionally affirmations would be pulled down or channeled. And I would write them out for the person and say, do this in between.
Mm,
And so that I had a record of all these beautiful affirmations that I would sometimes read and say, even though that's specifically for this person, this could help a lot of people. So I would make it into a pretty little kind of meme and put it on social media. But I had an idea in my head of either doing like an affirmation deck or an affirmation book. And then when the pandemic happened, I said, well, now it's time. You have to write the book. You have extra time on your hands. It's time. And I realized it could not be a deck. There was way too much to put into this little square or rectangle. And so I started writing, and the book concept came together very quickly and easily. Many more affirmations were kind of channeled or configured, and lots of verse and prose in between stories or ideas and lists and things like that to help people help themselves. So, are we allowed to do R-rated words, or should I bleep myself?
No, go for it. Go for it.
Okay. So the original thought of the title was manifest the fuck out of your life.
Mm,
And that I was going with that. And then my editor said, listen, I love your book. It helped me so much. I think it can help a lot of people, but I don't think the title fits the book.
mm,
And she said, go look at this book, that book with titles that have, curses in the title. They're very sassy. They're very kind of sharp, and the whole thing is sharp tongue. And she said that my book was more nurturing and caring, and I had to kind of rethink the concept. The cover was already starting, and it had to be reconfigured. And um, I was asleep, and I heard I do Reiki on myself. My self-care is Reiki as well. And I was asleep and I heard hold space. And I was like, hold space. And they said, yes, that's the title. And I was like, oh, yes, hold space. And they said, wake up, write it down. And I was like, I'll remember. And they're like, no, you won't, wake up. And I literally, someone was shouting, wake up until I woke up. I literally had no paper near my night table, got my phone and typed in the notes, hold space. And when I woke up, I had not remembered it, but I remember I wrote something down and I went and checked and I was like, oh my, this is it. Because this is what Reiki, a lot of people say, a Reiki practitioner or Reiki master is not the healer. The Reiki is the healer. We're just holding space. And therapists say that a lot too. I'm holding space for your healing. And so that is how the title came.
Wow. I really want the the draft of that cover, the one you actually said that you were going to go and make. I'm quite fascinated and interested if that worked. But I'm trying to figure out also is that maybe, do you think that people relate to the words of the title or the actual book itself? Does that make sense of what I'm saying? The original title that you came up with, do you think that they'll connect with you more versus just the content itself?
I think a little of both. I think that hold space, now that we are in a mental health crisis
Hmm.
currently with the world as it is, I think that phrase gets thrown around even more. And so I think it's, in a sense, a buzzword that people can connect to. Um, there's also a subtitle, which is Affirmations and Meditations for Healing and Loving Yourself. So when that combined with hold space, I think it tells you exactly what it is and what it can do for you.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you again. So, thank you for explaining all that title. I would have really liked the other title, but that's okay. So let me ask you this here. Is Reiki very complicated or is it very simple?
It's actually, I think, both. It
Okay.
can be very complicated, but it also is very simple because if we think of the simplicity of everything in the universe is made of the same stardust or carbon or, energy,
Hmm.
then it's very simple. And that energy is available to us. It's really available to anyone,
Hmm.
but particularly people who train in the Reiki practice work hard and learn how to bring it through in an unconditional way and then help a person or hold space for a person to heal themselves. So that aspect of it is the simple. It sounds easy, um, but as for the healing itself, it's never easy. It's almost always complicated and sometimes ugly and messy and painful. So that aspect, it's a little more complicated. But Reiki has this way of um, being this Reiki-ness and being this unconditional aspect of love and energy and our truth. And I think that every session has a potential to bring you closer to your truth and your highest point of yourself or highest energy level of yourself.
Michelle, so basically the answer is that it's not complicated. I think the complication comes in is the healing part, which is the patience part. Am I right? Is that the sense that
Yes.
I'm getting?
Yes. I mean, there is, of course, anybody who practices Reiki will tell you that the practice part and the learning is also challenging.
Of
It doesn't
course.
always come
Because,
easy to everyone, but
well,
yes.
when you start something new, it is going to be complicated in the beginning. But I think that's a learning curve, not a complication, I feel. I
Yes.
mean, that's just my thought process. But everyone is different, so don't judge me on that part. Uh, so I think there's another teachings that you do. I think it's called Akashic Records. Can you explain that and pronounce that again, please, if you don't mind?
Sure, sure. Akashic Records.
Okay.
So, um, basically, so if we go into the root word, which is Akash, or which is basically the ether or space or
Yeah.
heavens.
Hmm.
And then the Akashic records are believed that we, each and every one of us, have a an um, in Latino culture or Mexican culture, they have the book of life, right?
Hmm.
So this is what the Akashic records is, that each of us has this book, or I like to think of it almost like the cloud, and we have all of our karma, all of our past history in this lifetime and any other lifetimes we've lived, and potential future lifetimes are all in the Akashic records, or this kind of etheric library. And
Hmm.
each of us has this book or cloud there that holds all those records of our past, present, and future, or our
Hmm.
potential futures.
Hmm.
And so what happened for me is that when I trained for with a Reiki master to learn Reiki, I thought that Akashic records was part of the practice, that you just instantly had connection,
Hmm.
or if you had, that it just kind of happened, it was part of the process. I
Hmm.
only learned um, about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago that it was something different.
Hmm.
And I had had experiences with it in my past before Reiki, but didn't know there was a name for it. Anyway, long story short, during my sessions, I could connect sometimes to people's childhood
Hmm.
traumas in their childhood, or past lives would come forward, and I could mention them to people, and that would help the healing process. So it goes into this greater depth of, again, trauma, or where a problem or a condition or a limiting belief started. And we can really only heal when we can go all the way back to that point, where whether it's in this life or another lifetime.
Yeah, thank you again. So let me ask you this. Is there a thin line between Reikiness and meditation? Because it sounds the same, but we need to start to explaining people that there is a difference between the two. So where does it hand off to the Reikiness and Reikiness back to meditation? Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does. Um, so meditation can get you there for yourself, right? You can get to these higher levels and meditate and heal yourself through meditation, breath work, all that. Absolutely. I think they're almost like you said, this thin line or this parallel line with each other. Um, it's almost like faith, like all different religions can bring you to the same source. So Reiki, meditation, yoga, martial arts, all these different things can bring us forward to, again, our truest self or highest frequency.
Mm, mm. Yeah, thank you again. So is there a certain proper course that you have to learn about the Reikiness, or can I just go to YouTube and start doing it right now? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Traditionally, a person should train with a Reiki master, and
Mm,
it's usually 3 levels. The first level is kind of introductory and beginner, and you
mm,
work on self-care and practicing on yourself and healing your own self. Because
mm,
when we are, and we can be in any state of, we don't have to be perfectly healed to work on someone else, but it's really important for us to learn the practice of self-care first, and
sure.
that is a great foundation for anyone. So I always recommend anyone in existence, no matter your age, no matter your problem, your likes, dislikes. If you learn Reiki level 1, you will always have a tool for self-care. And
Mm,
then level 2 is learning about remote Reiki and how to send it over distance, space, time, um, and also working on other people and bringing that aspect into it, and also how to keep that kind of, we'll call it detachment from getting involved in someone else's stuff and still maintaining your own energy field. And then master level is for those who really want to practice it in either a professional way or learn to teach it. And those are the full 3 levels. And it's always recommended to do it with a Reiki master. There are some, videos out there that people can do, but it's kind of, you're flying without a net because there's nobody to really lean on or ask questions to and have support. So most Reiki masters are, when they make this commitment to be your teacher, will be there for support and guidance along the way.
Of course. Thank you again for that. So if you can tell me very quickly the top three um, clients that they come to you, what are the major issues that they come to you and then they ask for help?
Good question. Um, I tend to attract a good deal of people who have past trauma, um, which I tend to believe every Reiki master attracts the people or the problems that they can best handle. So whether ends up being past life or childhood or so on. But so that is one way that Reiki can help, is to ease the suffering of trauma. And then I have clients who are just stressed out. So for example, everything that's going on in the world with COVID and climate change and so on, and anxiety and stress is another big group of people that may come for that kind of help. And that actually has been scientifically proven that Reiki can help with stress and relaxation. And then pain is the other one, pain management, which is also something that they have been studying scientifically in the labs, double blind, all that somehow Reiki healing can help reduce pain.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you again. And then one last question, if you don't mind. How
Sure.
obviously it might be a really easy answer, but maybe not. How easy is it to find the best one for you?
Good question. I actually love that question because I believe I have that on a frequently asked questions on my website, because I think it's important to find the right fit of a Reiki practitioner based on their ex- experiences. What if they have a specialty area, or to make sure that they practice on themselves regularly, because there are people out there that forget about themselves. And when we do forget about the self, we become kind of ungrounded and unable to help people at our best, because we're not at our best.
Hmm.
Um, so I always say to kind of make some phone calls, check out websites. If there's a picture on the website, does that give you a vibration of that person could possibly help me? And then
Hmm.
pick up the phone and hear the voice. Trust your instincts, because that is already waking you up to your truth. And if your instinct says, this person can help me, great. But if your instinct is, I don't know if I trust this person, then don't.
Sure. I mean, that's the same answer when you go to a doctor or a dentist or any of those aspects, right? I think the connection has to be there. The vibe has to be there. So I think those are the things needs to happen too. But the vibe that I'm getting from you, Michelle, you're totally awesome. The way you, know your stuff, and the way you handle that book, it's amazing. That book, I read like brief stuff online, uh, great reviews. So thank you again, Michelle, for that. Now, one last question, if you don't mind, before you leave today. Do you have any last words or last comments for Back to Basic listeners and viewers for this show? And how was your journey on Back to Basics?
Well, I'm going to start with the last question. And I love spending time with you. I love this, this platform and what you're doing for all of your listeners. And I hope that you expand and get many more listeners because of all the help that you can bring out into the world.
Thank you.
Um, and my message to all you listeners is, mindfulness and peace and calm does not have to be complicated. We have this basic tool in our bodies of breath. And when we are stressed, we shorten our breath, we have shallow breath, and it makes us more anxious. When we need to relax, deep breaths are the helpful part. Taking a nice deep breath and exhaling it out even slower than your inhale can calm you down. Even if you do 3 breaths like that, it can help you calm down and center and ground.
Thank you again, Michelle. I think right after this phone call, I think I'm going to take a deep breath also. So thank you again for all the time and all the support that you've given me in this small podcast that I have. And hopefully I'll see you more with other topics and other books that you're going to come up with. And please do contact us if you do, because I would love to talk to you again. So thank you again for your support.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all of this.
Thank you again. So guys, we spoke with Michelle today and we talked about the Reiki-ness. We talked about taking breathe in and breathe out. Relax and relax out. That's what we all say. And there's one thing that she did say. Find the right one for you. And what does Reiki-ness mean? It's not that complicated. The only complication out of this whole Reiki-ness is the healing part. But that's it. Guys, as usual, as always, there is a quote of the day, and hopefully the guest will like the quote of the day for today. And the quote is, mindfulness means being awake. It means knowing what you are doing. Now, guys, as usual, as always, what do I always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and keep on commenting as much as you can, good, bad, ugly, either way. It'll make my show stronger day by day, week by week, because of your comments, no one else's. And there are three things that this show is always a hit. One, the content. The other, awesome guest. And the third of all, amazing host. Guys, take care, God bless, and I will see you next week. Next week's episode on Back to Basics.
A documented trait of millennials, surprisingly enough. But it's all about prioritizing for yourself. And we have so much technology that can be overwhelming, but it can actually be helpful for us. So there's two parts to what we talked about, or you mentioned. One, we are taught that we should be high performing at all times. You should get straight A's. You have to be the fastest on the track team. You have to do all of these things. And we're going to overwhelm you at finals and midterms. And you should be able to perform.